You coming back tomorrow, Eric? Or is this a once-a-week miracle? The foreman asked, stuffing crumpled bills into my hand as the forklift beeped behind him. I told him maybe. Depends if the construction site called first. He laughed and slapped my shoulder. Most of the guys come in drunk or desperate. You show up clean, early, and don't steal tape. You're weird. I walked off with the bills tight in my fist, heading for the busted-up duplex on the edge of town, the one with no power, no heat, and no front door, unless you count a tarp and a bucket of bricks. Before we start, tell us in the comments which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today. Thanks. And now the story. Those bills meant food, meant maybe bus fare, maybe a pair of sneakers that didn't flap at the toes like talking puppets. Pierce hollered from the second-story window before I even reached the porch. "Made chowder, baby. Out of canned meat and dreams." He waved a dented pot like he was hosting a cooking show. I saw Alan behind him in the dark hallway, arms folded, just nodding like he always did. "I'll grab a bowl in a bit," I said. My leg was killing me from carrying freight all morning, and I needed a second to not smell fish. I ducked into my room, really just a back corner with drywall scars and a twin mattress on the floor, and popped open the old cookie tin I kept under the crate I used for a nightstand. I slid the day's money in with the rest. Not much, but enough to matter. I'd turned 25 last month, celebrated by buying a bag of sugar cookies from the Dollarway Mart. Passed them around the house like I was Santa Claus. Pierce called it a Michelin star party, and I laughed like it didn't sting that I'd never had a real cake in my life. Nights like that always dragged my head back to that state-run nightmare they called an orphanage. Bleach, sweat, locked doors. Discipline that left you with blood in your urine for a week. The staff acted like we were inventory, not kids. And I remembered that one day clear as glass. I was 13, just skin and bones. Snuck out during cleanup hour and found Mr. Carver, the director, walking toward the bridge by the drainage canal. He was carrying a cardboard box taped shut and real quiet. The box whimpered. I ran up just in time to see him lift it over the rail like he was dropping off garbage. I yelled, "What on earth are you doing?" He spun around, sneering. "None of your business." That was enough for me. I kicked his shin like my life depended on it, grabbed the box, and bolted. Ran 5 blocks till my chest felt like it might explode. Hid in an alley near the old welding shop, peeled the tape back with shaking fingers. Inside was this scrappy little mutt, maybe 2 months old, shivering, ribs poking out, ears like rusted velvet. I named her Freya on the spot. Swore out loud I'd never let anyone hurt her. Not the way they'd hurt us. She followed me through rain, through shelters, through years. Slept curled against my chest on nights too cold to move. Got sick 2 winters ago. I buried her with my coat wrapped around her out past the industrial park. Every time I walked off that loading dock with honest cash in my pocket, I told myself I was still keeping that promise. Still climbing out. Still her person. A couple days later, I counted out what I had in the cookie tin. Wrinkled 10s, a few 5s, some 1s. Stuffed them in my pocket, and limped down to Ridgeview Mall. My left foot was blistered raw from the busted sneakers I'd been dragging around for too long. Told myself if I finally bought a decent pair, I'd run out of excuses for skipping work on bad days. The discount shoe store was on the far side, past the food court, and that weird kids zone with the carpet that always smelled like bubble gum and mop water. I cut through to save time. Dozens of kids were running wild, chasing balls, jumping on those squishy foam things shaped like dinosaurs. For a second, I just stood there, watching them shriek and fall over each other, like they didn't have a care in the world. I'd never had a single weekend like that growing up. No ball pits, no parents waiting on a bench with juice boxes, just cold floors, bruises, and the threat of getting locked in the laundry room if you talked back. Off to the side, there was this small raised stage area, like a square platform with ramps and cheap light rigs on poles sticking up from it. Probably meant for magic shows or mall mascots, but there wasn't a single staff member in sight. That already felt wrong. It was too quiet over there. Then I caught a whiff of something sour and sharp, burnt plastic, and saw this slow, curling ribbon of gray smoke leaking out from under the back corner of the platform. I took one step closer, and that's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, sitting cross-legged right near the edge of the stage, half hidden by a curtain flap. She had a pink stuffed unicorn hugged to her chest and this far-off look on her face, like she was watching her own daydream. She didn't even seem to notice the smoke. I yelled, "Hey! Hey, kid! You need to move! Right now!" She blinked, like I'd just woken her up, but didn't move. Just clutched the unicorn tighter and stared like I was some random homeless freak who'd wandered into her world. I pointed again. "Smoke! You gotta move!" The lights above her started to crackle. One burst with a snap that made half the kids flinch. That's when the whole rack gave this deep electrical groan. Then a shower of sparks exploded out of the fixture. 1 second she was sitting there, and the next, the rig flashed and caught. All I could think about was Freya and that cardboard box, and how you don't wait when something's about to burn. You move, or you die. I ran. I didn't think, didn't check footing. I sprinted across the rubber mat, dove onto the stage, grabbed the girl with both arms, and threw my body around hers just as the metal frame above gave way and came crashing down. It slammed into me. Heat tore across my spine. I felt the heat first, then the weight, then nothing but the ringing in my ears and this heavy, deaf buzz that swallowed everything. There was screaming, someone nearby, high-pitched, panicked. Then a blast of cold and pressure against my back. A fire extinguisher hissed across my skin. My fingers went numb. I caught a blur of movement. Someone leaning over me. A girl, early 20s maybe, with a crooked name tag and gray eyes that looked terrified. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I thought you were gone." I wanted to say something. Ask if the kid was okay. But my mouth didn't work. Her badge read, Parkway Events, Temp, and then the hiss of the extinguisher got louder, and the light snapped out. When I woke up, I was face down on a hospital bed with gauze taped from my neck to the base of my spine. The pain was a steady throb, but I wasn't dead. That alone surprised me. A middle-aged doctor with tired eyes came in, checked the bandages, and introduced himself as Dr. Coleman. Said they'd had to graft skin from my thigh. Said I was lucky my spinal nerves hadn't cooked through, or I'd be paralyzed. I didn't feel lucky. My voice came out like gravel when I asked, "The girl, the kid, is she?" He nodded. "She's home. No burns, just a bump on the head. Your body took the hit." I let my head drop back into the pillow. Freya. I'd kept the promise again. "The mall's being investigated," he went on. "Events team. Wiring contractors. There's already a lawsuit in motion." I didn't care. None of that meant anything to me, not unless someone needed another body to testify. Before he left the room, Coleman paused at the door. "Do you have a place to go after this?" I made a joke. "Yeah, my suite on Maple. 2nd floor. No windows. Deluxe milk crate furniture." He didn't laugh, just frowned, then pulled a card from his coat and crossed the room to hand it to me. Haven Outreach Center. Housing. Meals. Career support. "It's new," he said. "Not perfect, but they'll get you a shower, maybe a job lead. If it gets rough, just go." I took the card. Didn't promise anything. But I didn't throw it away either. She was shaking when she said it. "I thought you were dead. I thought I killed you." Her hands were balled up in the apron like she needed something to grip or she'd fly apart. I sat down next to her on the concrete step. My back hated me for it, but I didn't move. "You didn't kill me," I said. "You're not even close." She wiped at her face, sniffed, then looked sideways at me. I was supposed to be watching the play area. I left for 2 minutes to rinse off paint. Some kid had smeared it on the foam animals. I came back, and there was fire, and I grabbed the girl. You weren't there, sure. But that rig, That setup was a death trap before you ever clocked in." She nodded, but it was clear that logic didn't mean much to whatever guilt she was carrying. "I kept having nightmares," she said. "You on fire. That sound." I knew exactly what she meant. My dreams had been full of sparks and screaming too. "You didn't even know me," she whispered, "and you just ran into it." I gave her a look. I didn't think. I just saw a kid about to get badly hurt. That's all it took. Her eyes welled up again. "I don't know why this hits so hard." "Because you're decent," I said. "That's rare around here." She let out a half laugh, like she wasn't sure if I was joking. "I'm Eric," I said, holding out my hand. "Fresh out of skin grafts. Technically unemployed. Definitely underfed." She blinked, then reached out and shook it. Kira. It fit her. Simple, clean, not trying too hard. "Look," she said, standing up, brushing her apron down. "I need to get back inside before the kitchen lead freaks out." "But, can you wait? 5 minutes?" "I've got nowhere to be," I said, wincing as I leaned back. She smiled, a small, guilty one, and went in through the staff door. I sat there until the pain got too sharp in my shoulder. She came back out 5 minutes later, just like she said, holding 2 plastic containers and 2 plastic spoons. "You didn't eat," she said. "This is our secret backup chili. Has flavor. You've earned it." We ate sitting on the concrete, steam curling out of the containers, and for once I didn't feel like an outsider in some charity line. That was later the same day. Earlier that morning, I'd gotten out of the hospital with my discharge papers and a grocery bag full of pills. The bus ride back to the duplex felt longer than usual, like every bump in the road was pulling on my stitches. When I finally got to the porch, Pierce yelled like I'd come back from the dead. "No way! Alan! The kid's alive! Unreal!" He came flying out the front door in socks and nearly knocked me over with a hug. "Careful, man," I grunted. "I'm held together with gauze and spite right now." Alan appeared behind him, just nodded once. His eyes landed on the bandages creeping up my collar. He didn't say anything. He never did unless it mattered. "Thanks for not pawning my stuff," I said, limping inside. "You kidding?" Pierce said. "I almost framed it. Left the room exactly how it was. Figured you might want to haunt it." I tried to sit on my mattress and immediately regretted it. Every nerve in my back screamed. I clenched my teeth and leaned forward slowly. Pierce handed me a cup of hot something. "Tea," he said. "Dried berries. Field surgery grade stuff." Alan stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching, always watching. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw wires snapping and fire peeling toward my face. At some point, Alan knocked once and stepped into the doorway. He held something in his hand. "Found this when I was digging through my duffel," he said. "Kept it because it stuck with me." He handed it over. It was a missing child flyer. Faded, torn at the corners, probably 20 years old. The picture showed a blonde toddler with puffy cheeks and bright eyes. Even through the grainy print I could see it. There was something in the face. Familiar. Name, Eric, 2 years old. Last seen, Ridge County reported by Nathan Sanders. The last name meant nothing to me, but the face, the eyes. Alan cleared his throat. "Kid went missing after his dad got beat half to death. Made the papers for a few weeks. Big deal around here. Dad was some real estate guy. Rich. Powerful. I wasn't trying to mess with you. I just couldn't unsee it once I found it again." I stared at the flyer until my vision blurred. "You think it's me?" "I think it could be," he said. "And if it is, you got history none of us saw coming." Later I found Kira behind the Haven kitchen. I told her I wasn't there to sue anybody. I just needed to know if the kid was okay, and if she was okay. That was it. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and nodded. Her name was Maggie. Her mom showed up that night, took her home after the medics cleared her. She was scared, but fine. I let that settle. The burns still lit up under my shirt. but some of the weight finally let go in my chest. She looked me over with a kind of quiet guilt. "How old are you?" 25, I said. "Why?" She shrugged. "I'm 21. Not that different. Just thought maybe you were older. When you live on the street, you earn dog years." That got a real laugh out of her. She leaned back against the brick wall. "Where are you staying now?" "Abandoned duplex, east side," I said. "No heat, no door, mattress on the floor, full luxury." Most people would have recoiled. Not Kira. "Got enough blankets?" she asked. "And does the burn scar ache when it rains?" It stopped me cold. She wasn't judging. She was checking. "No one's ever asked me that," I said. "Most people don't know what to ask," she said softly. Before we headed back inside, she glanced down at her shoes, then up at me again. "If you ever want to see a movie or something, I work nights at Parkway Cinema. I sell tickets. I can sneak you in. Professional perk." I grinned. "Might take you up on that." She hesitated for a second, then added, "Sometimes I cover mall events too. Weekends mostly. Extra cash. That's how I ended up in the play zone." It tracked, made the fire mess make more sense. I showed up the next night. Couldn't explain why, but I cleaned up best I could. Old thrift jacket, jeans with only one hole. She was in the box office, squinting at a register, but the second she saw me, her whole face changed. "Pick a screen," she said, sliding me a stub. "Loudest Movies Theater 3. She met me in the back row once the lights went down. I barely followed the plot, some action flick with non-stop explosions. But every time the screen flashed, my hands clenched the armrests. My body still remembered burning. She noticed. After the credits rolled and we stepped into the parking lot, she asked, "You good?" "I'm getting there," I said. "Some nights are rougher." She didn't offer sympathy, just reached out, took my hand and said, "Healing doesn't follow charts. You know that." We started meeting up a few times a week. I picked up whatever jobs I could, loading dock when they called, framing work on the edge of town, even a couple demo gigs that paid in gas station gift cards. She stuck to her cinema shifts and volunteer work at Haven. On our slow nights, we walked aimlessly, talking about anything except family. I told her about Freya, about the bridge, the box, the promise I made not to let people break things that couldn't fight back. She listened like every word mattered, but when I asked about her parents, she shut down fast. "My dad's old school," she said, "wants control over everything. He'd never forgive me for leaving home, so I don't go back." That was all she said. One night we were at the duplex, sitting in the living room with the windows covered in trash bags and duct tape. Pierce was rambling on about how he used to flip stocks from a laptop in Cabo. Probably true, partly. And Alan was on his usual perch near the wall, dead silent. Eventually, Alan tapped my shoulder and motioned me into the back hallway. He pointed at the flyer he'd pinned to the cracked plaster wall next to a dusty map and a faded Army group photo. "Been thinking about this again," he said. It was that same missing child flyer. Eric, 2 years, under a grainy picture that still made my stomach twist. Alan pulled a folded newspaper clipping from the inside of his coat. Library had it. Microfilm. Old article. Story about a developer named Natan Sanders. Big shot. Had a son go missing after getting beat nearly to death by his business partner. It's buried news now. But this... He tapped the article. "This man here?" He pointed to a picture of Natan in the article. A hospital shot with bruises on his face, but eyes wide open and defiant. "He's got the same pale eyes as you. Look at the hand, too. Thumb mole. Same as yours." I stared at it. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I just said, "A lot of people have moles." "Sure. But not a lot of kids vanish from Ridge County the same year you show up at the orphanage with no real paperwork." That night, the flyer stared at me from the wall until I turned the lights off. The next evening, I met up with Kira outside the cinema. She was locking the doors after a late screening. I handed her the article. She read it once, then again, slower the second time. Her shoulders tensed. "What?" I asked. She looked up, tried to hide it, but something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition and fear. "You've heard the name before," I said. "Sanders. You know it." "I don't," she started, then stopped herself. "It's just a common name. Not around here, it's not." She shoved the article back toward me. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to be honest." She looked away, jaw tight. "I didn't lie. Not lying and not telling aren't the same thing." She didn't respond. Just walked to her car and drove off. I stood there in the empty parking lot, staring at the flyer in my hand, trying to tell myself I was chasing ghosts, that nothing added up, that the mole was just a coincidence, that my life wasn't about to spin in a direction I couldn't control. I walked the 2 miles back to the duplex with my hoodie pulled up and my back on fire from the cold night air, still thinking about her face when she read the name. When I got back from the cinema that night, Alan was waiting on the porch like a gargoyle, crouched on the top step, hands in his coat pockets. "You got mail," he said without looking up. I raised an eyebrow. "From who? Santa Claus?" He stood, pulled out a folded envelope thick as cardboard, and handed it over like it might bite. Guy in a black sedan flagged me down by the scrap lot, called me by name, gave me that, and said it was important that Eric Moore gets it today. Tossed in a couple $100 for my trouble. That got my attention. I opened the note. Thick paper, heavy, clean serif font, printed like a wedding invite. It read, "Mr. Moore, please come to Harborview Plaza to receive a proper reward for saving my daughter. I apologize for the delay. I was overseas on business. Sincerely, Nathan Sanders, CEO, Sanders Infrastructure Group." My stomach flipped. The name hit me hard. Sanders. Same as the article Alan had shoved in my face. Same as the missing kid flyer. Same as the little girl I carried out of the fire. "Could be a setup," I muttered, folding the letter. Alan shrugged. "Or it could be real. You're the one who keeps attracting rich people's kids." I didn't sleep much that night. After my shift the next morning, lifting freight until my shoulders screamed, I rinsed off in the freezing yard sink, changed into my least embarrassing clothes, stuffed the note and some painkillers in my backpack, and caught the bus downtown. With every stop, the view got cleaner. Sidewalks swept, trash bins untagged, shiny SUVs instead of rusted-out pickups. I started to feel more out of place with every stop. Harborview Plaza rose clean and angular, sharply new and expensive. All glass and brushed steel, with some abstract sculpture in front that probably cost more than my entire childhood. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. The receptionist wore a navy blazer, hair up in a clip, the kind of person who looked at guys like me and reached for security. But when I gave her my name, her whole face changed. "Mr. Sanders is expecting you. Take the elevator to the 23rd floor." I stepped in. Mirrors all around. I caught my reflection and nearly stepped back out. Gaunt, sunken eyes, thrift jacket too big on one side, burn scar peeking out of my collar. But I wrote it up. The office looked like a glossy magazine spread. Clean angles, soft lights, leather chairs that probably cost 4 figures apiece. And near the floor-to-ceiling windows stood a man holding a tiny espresso cup with 2 fingers, studying the skyline in a still, measured way. Because he did. He turned as the doors slid open. His eyes landed on me, and the color drained from his face so fast I thought he might collapse. The cup tilted, nearly spilled. "Sit," he said, voice tight. "Or, no. Wait." He crossed the room, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a bottle of pills and a glass of water. His hands shook. He popped one, took a breath, then gestured again. "Now sit." I lowered myself into a leather chair. Everything in me felt too loud. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, staring like he was trying to memorize my face. "Tell me where you grew up," I told him. "Foster home, then state-run orphanage, The bleach, the locks, the fists. Then the years after I ran. Warehouses, shelters, Freya, job sites, bus stations. I talked like it was someone else's life. He just nodded, absorbing it. "When did the state take you in?" he asked. 2, maybe 3, I said. Nobody ever said for sure. I was dropped off with a paper wristband. It had faded initials on it, LM, and a birthday. That's all. He stiffened. "LM," he repeated. "That's Leah, my wife, your mother." He stood, walked over to the desk, picked up a folder, and brought it back. From inside, he pulled a color copy of the same flyer Alan had, but this one was crisp, high-res, stapled to company letterhead. The toddler on the page stared up with a confused, almost amused face. Blonde, pale, with a stubborn cowlick that matched the one I still fought every morning in the mirror. "My name is Nathan Sanders," he said. "When you were 2 years old, I had a business partner named Byron Reed. We ran real estate projects together. Big money. Byron wanted me to sign over half the pipeline to him under the table. I said no." He took a breath. "Days later, I was jumped outside my office. Woke up in the hospital. Broken ribs, concussed, face black and blue. While I was out, my wife got a call saying you were being picked up from daycare by a company rep. She thought it was business as usual." My throat tightened. "They vanished with you," he said. "No ransom, no note. Just gone." Leah fell apart. She blamed herself. Died 18 months later from what the doctors called a sudden stroke. But I think she just quit. I looked down at my hands, calloused, cracked. "I hired everyone I could afford," he said. "Private investigators, cyber experts, off-books contacts. I searched for years. Nothing stuck. Then, 2 months ago, I saw the security footage from Ridgeview Mall." He reached into the folder again and pulled out a still frame. Me, blurred by smoke, holding Maggie in my arms as lights crashed behind us. "Then I read the report," he said. "Unidentified man, mid-20s, sustained burns, saved a child, walked into fire without hesitation." He leaned closer, turned his right hand palm up, then his thumb outward. There it was, the same dark mole in the same exact spot I had. I held my hand up next to his. Same size, same skin tone. It was like staring into some warped mirror. "I don't need a test to know," he said quietly. "But I'll get one anyway. For the paperwork. I had a son named Eric. You. And I think I just found him." My mouth wouldn't open. He stood up, walked to the minibar, poured 2 glasses of water, handed me one. "You saved Maggie," he said. "You risked your life for her. And I think you're the same boy I've been trying to find for over 20 years. If I'm right, then this office, this business, this life, it's all yours to walk into, if you want it." I stared out the window. 23 floors up from where I used to sleep on bus benches. For the first time in my life, I had something to lose. A week after that meeting in the office, the DNA results came back. I was standing in the hallway outside the lab, fidgeting with a plastic water bottle, when Nathan came out holding a paper in one hand and wiping his eyes with the other. He didn't say anything right away. Just wrapped his arms around me like he'd been carrying that hug for 23 years and didn't know how to land it right. He pulled back, voice cracking. "It's you. I knew it before the test, but it's really you. You're my son." He called me son, like a word he hadn't used in years. He offered everything right there. Proper ID, a legal name change, a spot in his home. I didn't give him an answer right away, just nodded and told him I'd think about it. But the second I got back to the duplex and opened my door, I knew the answer. I handed Alan an envelope first, fat with cash, more than I'd ever held, let alone given someone. "For the gear you fixed, for the meals, for always watching," I said. He didn't argue, just looked me in the eye and said, "Don't forget where you came from. Ever." Pierce nearly cried when I gave him his. Tried to make a joke about investing it in crypto and opening a diner called Dumpster Gourmet. But I could see it hit him harder than anything I'd said. It's a down payment on better times, I told him, and I'm not vanishing. You'll see me. Moving out felt like ripping out something rooted deep, but I did it anyway. Natan's house was perched on a hill above the river, all sharp glass and slate and stone, like something from a magazine ad for billionaire calm. I got out of the car feeling like a walking scar in a thrift store jacket. But Chloe, his wife, was waiting at the door. Maybe early 40s, clean cut, eyes steady as stone. She didn't flinch when she saw me. She just said, "Welcome home, Eric," and meant it. Then came the stampede. Maggie tore through the hallway with a rainbow barrette bouncing off her curls and launched herself at my legs. "It's you, the guy from the fire. You're the real one. You saved me." I crouched, even though it hurt like fire, and let her squeeze my ribs like they weren't still healing. She called me Big Brother Hero from that moment on, and barely left my shadow for the next week. That first night, Natan sat me down at the long table in the dining room. Real wood, polished, probably older than me. He laid out a thick binder, opened it, and looked me straight in the eye. "I want to know what happened to you after you vanished," he said. "Not just for closure. I want to hold the people responsible." He introduced me to his investigator, a guy named Grant with salt and pepper stubble and a voice like gravel. Halfway through the meeting, Alan's name came up. "Wait," I said. "Alan from the duplex?" "Used to be a reserve deputy," Grant said. "We worked a missing persons task force together 15 years ago. He's the one who called me." We went over every scrap of paperwork I'd ever remembered. My intake form at the orphanage, the wristband, the fake birth certificate, and Grant traced the signature on the placement file to one person. Victor Carver, director of Ridge County State Youth Home. The same man who used to drag boys down the hallway by their hair. The same one who nearly tossed Freya into the river. It got worse. Grant found a paper trail. Bank wires from a shell company registered in Nevada, tied back to Byron Reed. Steady payments every quarter, landing in an account linked to Carver. "So that's how he got rid of me," I said. "Bought my file like I was inventory." Natan's jaw clenched so hard I heard it. "We're not just going after him," he said. "We're tearing that place down." He called in every favor he had, regulators, state attorneys, reporters who owed him a quote. Within 6 weeks, the state moved to suspend the orphanage's license. Within 3 months, it was shut down for good. Carver and 2 of his top staff were arrested. Child endangerment, fraud, and conspiracy charges stacked like bricks. A few others got banned from working with kids ever again. The boys and girls still inside got reassigned. Smaller homes, better placements, ones with real inspections and locked doors that only worked from the inside. Natan took me back there once. Just the 2 of us, plus a caseworker. We walked through the empty dorm where I'd spent half my life staring at ceiling tiles and counting bruises. I stopped by the bunk I used to sleep in, bottom row, near the vent that hissed at night, and stared at it until the caseworker asked if I was okay. "I'm not," I said, "but I will be." Then I gave the director my number, told her, "If any of these kids ever needs help paying for school or a lawyer or just someone to show up, call me. No questions." After that, I tried to throw myself into the business side of things, sat in meetings, nodded through zoning charts I didn't understand, tried to figure out how you go from the sidewalk to the skyline. Chloe helped with the small stuff, fitted me for suits, showed me how to use spreadsheets, explained the polite version of boardroom politics. She never treated me like I didn't belong, not once. But there was one part of my life that didn't fall into place. Kira. I called her, texted, nothing. A week later, she asked to meet me in the park. She looked pale, lips chapped, eyes red like she hadn't slept. "I can't do this," she said. "You've got a future now. You don't need my baggage." I asked her what kind of baggage she meant, and she just shook her head, blinking fast. "You're on your way to becoming someone who matters," she said. Someone who gets written about. And I'm not that. I'm everything you had to crawl out of. You don't get to decide that for me, I said. She leaned in, kissed me once, quick, painful, then walked away fast before I could stop her. I stood there in the middle of the park, alone, fists clenched, watching the only person who ever saw all of me vanish into the crowd. And for the first time in months, the fire in my back wasn't the worst thing burning. I didn't believe for a second that Kira just walked away because my life was getting too big. People ghost when they're scared, not bored. So I started where we always started. The Haven Center, the cinema, that alley behind the outreach kitchen where she used to sneak me extra bread. Nobody had seen her, not in days, not even a whisper. That silence scared me more than any voicemail ever could. I called Pierce. "You want the network?" he asked. "Done. I'll put word out by midnight." When you spend your life on the street, you learn quick. The real information doesn't come from phones or offices. It lives in shelters, soup lines, smoking corners behind gas stations. And if you respect the people who sleep under benches, they'll move faster than any cop ever will. 2 days later, Pierce texted me one line. Weekly motel, East Side, name's Kate. My heart jumped out of rhythm. I found the place before sunset. Paint peeling, front sign buzzing, plastic chairs bolted down outside the office. I scanned the row of doors until I found number 12, then knocked. Soft. Twice. The chain clicked before the door cracked open 3 inches. Her eyes showed first. Tired, red. Then her voice. "You followed me?" I said nothing. Just waited. She shut the door. A moment later, the chain rattled and it opened fully. Inside, the place smelled like cheap soap and microwave noodles. She sat down on the edge of the bed, hands in her lap like a kid waiting for a punishment. "You deserve to know," she said. "I just didn't know how to say it." "Start with your real name," I said. She looked up. Kate Reed. The second she said it, something dropped in my stomach. Cold, hard, final. "Byron's daughter," I said. She nodded. "His only one." I sat down on the opposite bed and ran a hand down my face. She kept going. "I left home because he was trying to marry me off. Some tech heir from Connecticut. One of those land deals disguised as a wedding. I didn't want any part of it. I changed my name, got out, started volunteering. Tried to feel human again." "And the mall?" I picked up a shift that morning. It was supposed to be an easy event. Face painting and a music act. I was in charge of setting up sound. The dimmer rack was already hot when I got there. I knew it needed maintenance, but I didn't wait. She squeezed her eyes shut. It was my fault. The arc, the sparks, all of it. I ran off to wash paint off my hands and came back to fire and screaming. "I thought you were dead." "I'm here. The fault was the rig and the wiring, not you," I said. "But I almost did. And I never told you who I was because I knew what would happen if Natan found out." She opened a drawer, pulled out a folded envelope. Inside was an old family photo, Byron in the center, his arm tight around a younger version of her. Byron stood in a tailored suit, his smile tight and his eyes hard. "If he finds out I'm with you," she said, "he'll come for both of us." "I've got a dad now," I said, "and he's not scared of Byron Reed." I stood and crossed the room, held out my hand. "Come with me. Let's put it on the table." She hesitated, then stood, nodded once. We went to Natan the next morning. The second she said Kate Reed, the air in the room turned electric. Natan didn't yell, didn't curse, just sat down hard in his office chair, like the weight of 2 decades had landed square on his chest. He turned to her first. "You're not him, and I won't treat you like you are. But I need to know everything." She told him. Everything. From the arranged marriage threats, to the temp job at the mall, to hiding her name so Byron wouldn't use her as leverage. When she finished, Natan was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, mostly to me, but not only. Byron was my closest friend. We built this company side by side, and he burned it all for control. When I woke up in that hospital and you were gone, I knew it was him, but I couldn't prove it. Now we can. He called Grant right then and there, told him to dig into city permits, specifically the ones slowing down our newest transit hub. In less than a week, the trail lit up instantly. Byron's old shell companies had started buying property right along the projected rail line. Permits were stalling mysteriously. Inspectors were ghosting appointments. And he'd recently hired a security consulting firm run by a retired cop named Monroe. That name meant nothing to me, until Grant said Monroe used to be stationed in Ridge County, my orphanage town. That was the missing thread. This guy knew how to make things disappear, Grant said, back then and now. We were finally putting the pieces together, too late. 3 days later, I got the message. Unknown number. No subject, just a photo. Kate, tied to a chair, her wrists bound, face wet with tears, and a black pistol pointed at her temple. The text below said, Warehouse 18, South Side, come alone, no cops, no father, or she dies. I sat there, phone in my hand, pulse thundering in my ears. For a split second, every street instinct I had screamed, run, don't wait, go now. But I wasn't that kid anymore. I grabbed my coat, locked the screen, and walked straight into Natan's office. Dropped the phone on his desk without saying a word. He picked it up, studied the image, then looked at me and said, "This is Byron's style all over again." He pressed the intercom. "Get Grant and Allen. Now." The second Allen walked into Natan's office, the room changed instantly. He didn't ask questions, just took one look at the photo, picked up the landline, and dialed. Within minutes, he had a full tactical contact on the line, someone from his old days in state enforcement. "We've got exigent circumstances," he told them. "Kidnapping, confirmed armed suspects, known felons. We need a team with ears on and zero chatter." By the time Grant showed up, Allen had already marked a city map, circled 3 alternate routes in and out of the Southside Warehouse District, and briefed us both like he'd never left the job. I almost forgot he was the guy who used to warm beans on a space heater in our old duplex. Natan clipped the button mic inside his jacket collar without flinching. "You still want to come?" he asked me. I nodded once. We finished this together. We took his black SUV, clean and silent, headlights off until we were a block out. As we crossed into the warehouse strip, the air changed. That old smell, burnt oil, rubber, smoke that stuck in your lungs. I felt the same crawling tension down my spine I hadn't felt since the mall, the one that screamed, "Get out," but I shoved it down. Warehouse 18 was set back from the road, surrounded by broken fences and busted pallets. We parked a few buildings over. The state team was already staged, parked dark in an alley across the way, running full radio silence. We were the bait. They were the hammer. Inside, it was colder than it looked. Steel walls, flickering light from a busted industrial fixture, and that thick stench of damp concrete. Byron stood near the center with 6 men behind him, all armed. He looked older in person, silver at the temples, deeper lines in his face, but the eyes hadn't aged a day. Still sharp, still hollow. He smiled like this was a reunion. "Well, well, if it isn't the lost investment," he said, eyeing me, "and the fool who thought family was stronger than leverage." Kate sat 10 feet away, bound to a chair, wrists taped, mouth covered. Her eyes were wild, locked on me. Natan didn't react, just stepped forward. "You're making this worse for yourself, Byron." Byron chuckled, then pointed a remote at the corner of the room. A projector kicked on, displaying scanned contracts on a hanging sheet. "My lawyer prepared a simple arrangement," he said. "You sign the transit rights, deed the riverfront parcels, and wire the settlement by midnight. Or your son watches my men put a bullet through his girlfriend's head." I glanced at the paper stack on the table beside him. Legal documents, notarized, Real. He came ready. When Nathan didn't move, Byron waved to one of his guys. The man grabbed a red gas can, poured a line across the concrete near the pallets, and flicked a lighter. A row of oily rags went up fast, flames crawling like fingers, smoke starting to build. "You want history to repeat?" Byron asked me. "Because this smells a lot like your last fire." My throat locked. Smoke filled my nose, thick and dirty, waking every nerve in my back. Kate's chair was maybe 2 feet from the edge of the growing flame, and I saw red. I moved on instinct. I grabbed the nearest metal rack, ripped it off its bolts, and slammed it straight into the 2 goons guarding Kate. One went down hard, the other fumbled for his gun, but I was already moving. I bolted for Kate, ignoring the fire bite against my back, ignoring the shouts and boots hitting concrete. I reached her chair, yanked it backward away from the heat, just as Byron screamed, "Shoot him!" A shot rang out, missed. Concrete chipped near my feet. Then the warehouse door blew open. "State police, hands in the air!" The tactical team swarmed in at once, black uniforms and rifles up. Byron spun, gun raised, but a sniper red dot tagged his chest before he could breathe twice. Alan's voice crackled faintly from Natan's mic. "We have fire confirmation. Go." Officers took down the rest in seconds. Byron got tackled, face grinding into the floor, spitting blood and curses. I cut the tape from Kate's wrists with a box cutter one of the team tossed my way. She sobbed into my shoulder. "You came." "Always," I said, hauling her up and moving her toward fresh air. Behind us, one of the agents cuffed a gray-haired man I didn't recognize at first, until Grant said his name. Monroe. The same retired cop from Ridge County. The same ex-officer who greenlit my file into Carver's hands. I looked back at him as they shoved him into the wall. "Tell Byron the game's over." The paramedics cut her loose and had her on a stretcher within minutes. Kate kept trying to talk through the oxygen mask, clutching my hand like if she let go the smoke would find her again. Her eyes were bloodshot and wet, and all she could say was, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," over and over. She didn't need to be. Not to me. At the hospital, I found myself back in one of those vinyl chairs that smelled like old plastic and bleach. The same kind I used to sit in while nurses redressed my burns. Only now I was holding someone else's pain instead of mine. Kate kept apologizing. To the nurses, to me, to the air, like she was trying to buy forgiveness by the hour. "I never should have pulled that power cord at the mall," she whispered, voice raw. "And I never should have lied about my name. I was scared you'd hate me. I wouldn't have blamed you." I shook my head. "We both ran from where we came from. You changed your name. I buried mine. We're both done letting Byron script our lives." She stared at me like she didn't deserve the words, but she didn't argue. A couple days later, after her lungs had cleared and her voice came back normal, I showed up with a box in my pocket. I didn't make a speech or drop to one knee. The room barely had space to turn around, but I sat next to her and asked her straight, "You want to marry me? Last name drama and all?" She blinked, stunned, then laughed through tears. Nobody in my family has ever done something without calculating leverage. This feels like stepping into open air. "Yeah," I said. "Let's jump." She said yes. Just like that. No conditions. No fear in her voice this time. The trial started 2 months later and dragged on longer than any of us wanted. Byron tried to bluff his way through the first charges: kidnapping, arson, attempted murder. But once the money trail came in and matched the orphanage placement records to his old accounts, the real weight hit. That part was mine to carry. I took the stand and gave them the facts. Stayed home. No parents. A wristband with my birthday and some faded initials. I told them about the fire, the years I lost, and the boy I'd been before someone traded me like scrap metal. Kate testified too. Said growing up in the Reed house felt like being listed on an asset sheet. Told them the only time she ever felt human was when she handed out soup with her sleeves rolled up at Haven. The prosecutor didn't need more than that. The jury was out less than 6 hours. Byron went down hard. The kidnapping, The orphanage scheme, the corrupt city dealings. It stacked up to decades in prison. The retired cop from Ridge County got his sentence too, and some city officials who'd stalled our permits got smart and resigned before their names hit the headlines. Natan didn't stop there. He filed a civil suit that stripped Byron's shell companies of the riverfront lots. A judge handed most of them back to the city under the condition that a chunk of it went toward affordable housing and a youth center. Natan made me project lead for the community side of the build. "You earned it," he said, "so now use it." I brought Alan on as head of security. The man barely blinked. "About time you gave me a real badge," he said. Pierce took his cut from the envelope I gave him and checked into rehab that same week. 6 months later, Natan pulled a few strings and got him into Haven's kitchen program. Last I saw, he was running their lunch prep like it was a Michelin star restaurant. Kate dropped Reed like a bag of bricks, walked into the courthouse with one name, and walked out with mine. Sanders. No hyphen, no compromise. She never once visited her father in prison. Not once. When people asked her why, she just said, "I chose love over leverage." And that was the end of it. I'm 58 now. Every morning when I shave, I see the lines around my eyes that used to be my father's. Same shape, same tired pull. There's a wristband framed beside the mirror, paper, yellowed, barely legible, but those faded initials, LM, are still there. My mother's name. The only thing of hers I ever had. And just below my thumb, that same mole I once hated. Now I keep it like a badge. Kate says I get quieter with age. She's probably right. We've got 2 kids, Liam, 14, and Nora, 12, and they never stop talking. Not even in their sleep. They argue over whose turn it is to walk Foxy, our mutt with a busted ear, and this ridiculous fox-colored tail that never stops wagging. That dog picked us more than we picked her. Found her on the side of the road outside the old warehouse site. She climbed into the back seat and never left. Sometimes when Foxy stares too long at me with those big eyes, I remember Freya. That box, that choice, still messes me up. I run a good chunk of Sanders infrastructure now. The title sounds bigger than it feels. I wear suits, sure, but the projects I care about most wouldn't impress a room full of shareholders. The community center that now stands where my old orphanage used to rot. The housing units we built behind the rail line, right near where I slept the winter I turned 21. Every Thursday I make it a point to stop by the Haven Center. Pierce runs the kitchen like a drill sergeant with a spatula. If a volunteer burns the rolls, he'll shout, then hug them 2 minutes later. Alan sits near the front door most days, quiet as always. But every runaway, ex-con, or street kid who walks in catches that look from him, the one that says, "You're not invisible here." Maggie drops by sometimes. She's running a nonprofit now. Art therapy, mural stuff. She's 40, swears I'm hopeless with anything that plugs in, and still calls me Big Brother Hero. Last week she helped Nora paint her room. Lime green. Unforgivable. Kate's still my anchor. Some nights we drive past the old warehouse lot. There's a park there now. Trees, benches, a new transit hub where everything once caught fire. Most folks have no idea what used to happen there, but my back still tightens every time. Like it remembers what my brain tries to forget. I still flinch at certain sounds. Sirens, cracking wires, cheap cologne that smells like Carver's belt drawer. But now when I look out the bedroom window, I don't scan for exits. I see home. That alone took years to believe. At the office, people know parts of my story, not the whole thing. I don't lead with it. But they know I fight like mad for safety line items and why I show up when a junior guy admits he's crashing in his car between shifts. If some kid out there, like the one I used to be, is listening, here's what I'd tell you. You're not weak for caring. You're not broken just because no one showed up for you early on. And the smallest, stupidest choice, like stepping toward a scream instead of walking away, can flip your whole life sideways. I went from a cot in a state home to a box under a bridge. From that fire in the mall to an office overlooking the city. From nothing to this. And all of it, started the moment I ran toward the smoke. Before you head out, let me throw something at you. If life ever cornered you the way it did me, would you run from the fire or push straight through it to protect someone you love? If you've got hype, tap it now to boost this story so more people can find it. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and hit like. Those clicks matter more than you think. Drop a comment too, even a simple good story, or tell me what choice you would make.